There comes a moment when a person finally realizes that the thing they once considered difficult was actually something deeply human. Your soulmate may be reaching that moment now. For a long time, they had a complicated relationship with emotional needs. Whenever someone wanted more communication, they felt pressure. Whenever someone needed reassurance, they felt responsible. Whenever someone asked where a connection was going, they felt as though they were being pushed toward an answer they were not ready to give. So they learned to create distance. They told themselves they needed freedom. They told themselves they needed less emotional expectation. They believed relationships were becoming complicated because people simply wanted too much. But life has been teaching them a different lesson. They are beginning to understand that having emotional needs does not make someone demanding. It makes them human. This realization began quietly. They were having a conversation with someone they trusted when the subject of relationships came up. Someone mentioned how important consistency can be. Your soulmate immediately wanted to disagree, but then they paused. Instead of reacting, they thought about it. What was so unreasonable about wanting someone to communicate? What was so excessive about wanting to know where you stand? Why had they always felt uncomfortable when someone simply wanted emotional clarity? Those questions followed them long after the conversation ended. That evening, they started thinking about their past. They remembered people who had asked them for reassurance. They remembered people who wanted more consistency. They remembered moments when someone simply wanted to feel important. At the time, they had interpreted those needs as pressure. Now they were wondering whether they had misunderstood them. Maybe those people were not asking for perfection. Maybe they were asking for participation. That distinction changed everything. Your soulmate began recognizing that there is a difference between someone demanding your entire life and someone wanting to know that they matter in it. There is a difference between constant reassurance and occasional emotional security. There is a difference between controlling someone and asking for basic consistency. For years, those differences had been blurred in their mind. Now they were becoming clear, and naturally their thoughts returned to you. They remembered moments when you may have wanted more clarity from them. Perhaps you wanted a conversation they avoided. Perhaps you wanted consistency they struggled to provide. Perhaps you simply wanted to know whether your feelings were being understood. Looking back, they could now see why your needs existed. It was not necessarily because you were asking for too much. It may have been because the connection mattered. When someone means nothing to us, we rarely need answers from them. We simply walk away. But when someone matters, uncertainty becomes painful. Your soulmate understands that now. They began thinking about the phrase they had silently carried for years. Why do they need so much from me? Now they were replacing it with another question. Why was I so uncomfortable giving something so basic? That question required honesty, and honesty revealed something deeper. Their discomfort was not always caused by the other person's needs. Sometimes it was caused by their own inability to meet emotional expectations. That was difficult to admit, but it was also freeing, because once they stopped blaming others, they could finally work on themselves. They began becoming more aware of their emotional availability. Could they communicate consistently? Could they offer reassurance without feeling trapped? Could they listen without immediately trying to escape the conversation? Could they make another person feel secure without sacrificing their own boundaries? They realized the answer could be yes. Healthy love did not require them to choose between freedom and connection. It required balance. They could have their own life and still be emotionally present. They could have boundaries and still be affectionate. They could need personal space and still communicate clearly. They could love someone without losing themselves. This understanding changed their idea of relationships. They no longer wanted a connection where nobody expected anything. Because a relationship without emotional expectations can sometimes become a relationship without emotional investment. They wanted something more genuine. They wanted two people who could openly say what they needed, and then listen to what the other person needed too. That is what emotional maturity began to mean for them. Not getting everything they wanted, not giving everything another person wanted, but creating enough understanding for both people to feel respected. And this realization brought a quiet tenderness toward your connection. They remembered the moments when your emotional needs may have felt difficult to them. Now they wondered whether they had been seeing those moments through the wrong lens. Maybe your questions were not demands. Maybe they were attempts to understand. Maybe your desire for closeness was not weakness. Maybe it was simply affection. Maybe the reassurance you wanted was not excessive. Maybe you simply wanted to know that your heart was safe in the hands of someone who claimed to care. These thoughts have been changing something inside them. They are learning that love is not about avoiding every uncomfortable conversation. Sometimes love is having the courage to stay through one. It is listening when another person says, "This matters to me," and instead of immediately becoming defensive, asking, "Help me understand why." That is the kind of emotional curiosity your soulmate is developing now, and perhaps this is why their perspective on you has become softer. They are not simply remembering what happened. They are understanding it. They are seeing the emotions behind the moments, and they are beginning to recognize that sometimes the person who seemed to be asking for too much was simply asking for the kind of emotional presence they were not yet ready to give. That realization may be uncomfortable, but it is also a sign of growth, because your soulmate is finally learning that healthy love does not ask you to become everything for someone. It simply asks you to care enough to understand what matters to them. And sometimes that is not too much at all. The more your soulmate thought about this realization, the more they began understanding something they had missed for a very long time. Emotional needs are not always requests for more. Sometimes they are invitations to become closer. That distinction changed the way they listened. Before, when someone expressed a concern, their first instinct was to protect themselves. They would think, "Why isn't what I'm doing enough?" Now they were learning to ask something different. What is this person actually trying to tell me? That question created space for understanding. They began realizing that when someone says they need reassurance, they may not be asking for constant attention. They may simply be saying, "I want to know that we are okay." When someone asks for communication, they may not be demanding access to every part of your life. They may simply be saying, "I don't want to feel shut out." When someone wants consistency, they may not be asking for perfection. They may simply want your actions to feel dependable. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this language. And once they did, many memories started looking different. They remembered moments when they became defensive. Moments when they treated emotional conversations as criticism. Moments when they thought giving someone what they needed would somehow make them lose their independence. Now they understand that boundaries and emotional availability can exist together. You can say no without becoming cold. You can ask for space without creating confusion. You can protect your peace without making someone question whether they matter. That balance is something your soulmate is learning now. It is making them more thoughtful about the way they communicate. They are becoming less likely to disappear when a conversation becomes uncomfortable, less likely to assume that silence will solve everything. less likely to interpret someone's vulnerability as pressure. Instead, they are learning to stay curious, to listen, to ask questions, to understand. And when they think about your connection, this growth becomes even more personal. They remember the moments when you wanted emotional clarity. Perhaps they did not realize what you were really asking for. Maybe they heard the words, but missed the emotion underneath them. Now they understand that sometimes a person is not asking for more love. They are asking for evidence that the love they already feel is being received. That realization has softened something inside them. They no longer see emotional reassurance as something embarrassing. They understand that even strong people sometimes need to hear, "You're important to me." Even independent people sometimes want to know, "I'm here." Even confident people can wonder whether they are being valued. There is nothing weak about that. It is simply part of being emotionally connected to another person. Your soulmate is also learning not to make promises they cannot keep. This is another important part of their growth. They now understand that giving false reassurance can be more painful than being honest. If they need time, they should say so. If they are uncertain, they should communicate that. If they care, they should not hide behind vague behavior. Clarity may not always produce the answer someone wants, but it allows them to make an informed emotional choice. And your soulmate is beginning to respect that. They are realizing that love should not keep another person trapped inside confusion, simply because they are afraid of an uncomfortable conversation. That realization has created more respect for the people they once misunderstood. And perhaps most of all, it has created more respect for you. They can now see that some of the things they once considered too much were actually signs that the connection mattered deeply to you. You wanted to understand. You wanted consistency. You wanted emotional honesty. You wanted to feel that your effort was being noticed. None of those things were unreasonable. They were simply things your soulmate had not yet learned how to handle. That is a very different truth. And accepting it requires humility. Your soulmate is developing that humility now. They are no longer trying to prove that they were always right. They are becoming more interested in becoming better. That is what real emotional growth looks like. Not rewriting the past. Not blaming yourself forever. Not blaming someone else for everything. Simply recognizing what you could have done differently, and choosing to do better from this point forward. This shift is also changing what they want from love. They no longer want a relationship where both people pretend they need nothing. They want two people who can be honest. Two people who can say, "This is what I need." And here, "Okay, let's understand each other." They want affection that feels safe. Communication that feels natural. Space that does not feel like abandonment. Closeness that does not feel like control. Love that allows both people to remain themselves while still choosing each other. That is the kind of connection they are beginning to value. And perhaps this is why your memory continues to matter. Not because they are stuck in what happened, but because the connection helped reveal something they had not fully understood about themselves. It showed them how deeply they could care. It showed them how uncomfortable vulnerability could make them. And now it is teaching them something else. That love becomes healthier when both people are allowed to have needs. Both people are allowed to speak. Both people are allowed to ask questions. Both people are allowed to say when something hurts. And both people deserve to feel heard. Your soulmate is finally understanding that a relationship should not be a competition over who needs less. It should be a space where two people can honestly communicate what they need while respecting each other's limits. That is a much more mature definition of love. It is not, give me everything. It is, let us understand each other. It is not, never disappoint me. It is, be honest with me when something changes. It is not, prove that you love me every day. It is, let your actions and words give me something real to trust. This realization has brought peace to your soulmate, because they no longer feel like love is a test they have to pass. They see it as something two people build together. And perhaps somewhere in their heart, they are also recognizing this. You were never asking them to be perfect. You were asking them to be present. You were never asking them to abandon themselves. You were asking them to let you understand them. You were never asking for impossible love. You were asking for honest love. And now, your soulmate finally understands the difference. They cannot change every moment that came before, but they can carry this lesson forward. They can communicate more clearly. They can listen without immediately becoming defensive. They can offer reassurance without feeling trapped. They can accept another person's emotions without treating them as a burden. And most importantly, they can love without making the other person feel guilty for having a heart. That is the transformation taking place within them. A softer kind of strength, a deeper kind of understanding. And perhaps the next time love asks them to show up emotionally, they will not see it as too much. They will see it as an opportunity to listen, an opportunity to connect, an opportunity to make someone feel valued, and an opportunity to finally give love the emotional presence it deserves.